Hello there, and welcome to Forgotten Worlds. My name is Thomas, and tonight I invite you to set everything else aside and settle into a gentler rhythm. Take a slow breath, feel the weight of the day ease from your shoulders, and let curiosity carry you somewhere strange, somewhere vast, somewhere that stretches far beyond the borders of ordinary thought. We've often wondered about visitors from the stars. Ancient myths, modern sightings, whole libraries of speculation circle around the idea of beings descending to meet us. But what if we've been looking the wrong way? What if the mystery of alien life doesn't lie in their arrival, but in our own existence? What if humanity itself is the visitor, not born of Earth alone, but seeded here, carrying a memory so old it has slipped beyond recall? It's a question that can't be answered quickly, and tonight we won't be trying to solve it. This is not a debate, but an exploration. A slow drift through history, myth, science, and dream, all the little fragments that suggest our story may not be entirely of this world. So, close your eyes if you'd like, and imagine the stars above you as more than distant lights. Imagine them as a kind of home, a place your very cells might remember. Because before we can explore the possibility that we are the aliens we search for, we first have to wander back into the beginnings of humanity itself, into the puzzle of where we came from and why we are so different from everything else around us. To begin, let's start with the mystery of our own origins. Within you, right now, in every one of the trillions of cells that make up your body, lies a script. Not a script written in ink or carved into stone, but in chemical letters A, T, C, and G, the building blocks of DNA. Together, they write the long story of life, stretching back billions of years. Each living creature is a variation of this script, carrying echoes of ancestors both familiar and unimaginable. The DNA of a fern, a mouse, or a whale shares passages with yours, reminders that we are all chapters in a book still being written. And yet, when you look closely, humanity's chapter holds strange twists. The most striking of these is tucked inside your chromosomes. Humans have 23 pairs, 46 chromosomes in total. Our closest relatives, chimpanzees, gorillas, and orangutans, have 24 pairs, or 48. At first glance, this may seem a trivial difference, but the way this difference occurred is remarkable. In humans, two ancestral chromosomes fused end to end, creating what we now call chromosome 2. Imagine taking two scrolls of ancient text and binding them into one, leaving faint stitching marks where the edges once were. That seam is still visible in our genome today. Chromosome 2 is not just any chromosome. It carries genes critical to development, immune function, and cellular life. Its fusion is considered one of the defining events that made us human. Without it, we might not exist in the form we know. Scientists describe it as a natural accident of evolution, two chromosomes joining together in an ancient ancestor. And yet, the neatness of the fusion, the way it lines up almost too perfectly, has sparked curiosity. Some have wondered, could this have been more than chance? Was our genome nudged, altered, perhaps even engineered at some stage in deep history? Of course, science treads carefully here. The prevailing explanation remains evolutionary. Mutations, recombinations, the long dance of natural selection. But if you let your imagination wander, there is something quietly unsettling in the thought that one of the defining marks of our species is a sudden stitching together of genetic text, as though by an unseen editor. What if chromosome 2 is less a quirk of biology and more a signature of intervention, long forgotten? Another piece of the puzzle lies in our voices. Humans are not the only species that communicate. Birds sing, whales call across oceans, primates chatter in complex patterns. But our speech is something different. It carries nuance, abstraction, endless variety. At the center of this ability is a single gene, FOXP2. FOXP2 is often called the language gene. Mutations in it can make forming speech nearly impossible, disrupting the delicate timing of tongue, lips, and breath. Versions of FOXP2 exist in other animals, but the human version is distinct. It carries small changes that seem to unlock the capacity for spoken language. Some evidence suggests these changes appeared within the last 200 years, a blink of an eye in evolutionary time. Think about that for a moment. For millions of years, our ancestors chipped stone and tended fires in silence, their communication limited to gestures and calls. Then, in what feels like an instant, words blossomed. Language took root, and with it, the ability to share stories, to imagine futures, to pass knowledge across generations. Civilization itself rests on that foundation. Without FOXP2, there would be no poetry, no mathematics, no history, and perhaps no wondering who we really are. It raises the same question as chromosome 2. Why then? Why so suddenly? Was it simply the right mutation at the right time, carried forward by the luck of survival, or was something else at play? Some researchers have even speculated that human language emerged too quickly to be explained by gradual evolution alone, as though the capacity had been introduced, not just discovered. When you step back and look at the whole genetic landscape, the strangeness deepens. Humans and chimpanzees share about 98 to 99% of their DNA. On paper, we are nearly identical. And yet, in reality, we are worlds apart. No chimpanzee builds telescopes to gaze at galaxies. No gorilla writes symphonies or maps the quantum fabric of the universe. The gulf between us and our closest relatives is not just a matter of percentages. It is a matter of something that feels almost unquantifiable. This has led to one of the oldest and most provocative questions in anthropology. Why are we so different? Some say it is simply the power of cumulative culture that once language ignited, each generation built upon the last, accelerating our growth. Others whisper of deeper possibilities. What if our genome carries instructions not entirely native to Earth? What if, hidden in the spirals of DNA, there are sequences that came from elsewhere, seeded long before memory, long before history? Panspermia, the idea that life may have been carried to Earth on comets or asteroids, is one possibility. But there is a more daring speculation that humanity itself was altered, deliberately shaped. Chromosome 2, FOXP2, the sudden leaps in symbolic thought, they could be seen not just as accidents, but as interventions. If so, who were the interveners? Advanced beings from beyond? Or perhaps earlier cycles of civilization on Earth itself, rising and falling, leaving only subtle fingerprints in the genome of their successors? Imagine this: long ago, before the last ice age, before the first stone tools we have found, there may have been another chapter. A species intelligent enough to manipulate the very fabric of life, to weave alterations into DNA. Perhaps they vanished, destroyed by catastrophe or by their own undoing. Perhaps they traveled onward, leaving Earth behind. But what if, before they left, they ensured that some part of themselves would endure? What if we are that inheritance, their children without memory, living in a world that feels both ours and not ours? This thought lingers when you consider the way humans stand slightly apart from the rest of Earth's life. We are fragile compared to many animals, with soft skin, poor night vision, and long, helpless childhoods. And yet we are also strangely suited to imagining, to shaping, to longing for the stars. Could this paradox reflect a design not wholly of this planet? To some, such speculation is fanciful, but even if we strip it down to science alone, the mystery remains. Our genetics do not fully explain the speed and scale of our rise. The seams of chromosome 2, the whispers of FOXP2, the gulf between us and our kin, they all leave room for wonder. And maybe that is the most important part. Not to claim certainty, but to recognize that inside your cells, hidden in the spirals of DNA, lies a story both familiar and strange. A story that may tie us to the Earth, but also hints at origins reaching beyond it. From fossils to genes, we find ourselves standing on the edge of a question larger than survival. If our bodies carry secrets written in code, what about the wider cosmos? What about the possibility that life, and even humanity itself, was seeded here not by chance, but by design? To explore that, we must step outward from our own bodies and into the universe itself. Because to understand whether we are truly of Earth, we have to ask, where did life begin at all? When we look up at the night sky, it feels vast and quiet, but in truth it is restless. Stars flare and fade, comets trace long arcs across blackness, asteroids drift, and dust clouds swirl in shapes too large to comprehend. Within that seeming emptiness, the ingredients of life are scattered everywhere: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. They float in icy grains, cling to rocks, and condense in the cold cradles between stars. The universe itself is a kind of workshop, producing the raw materials from which living things can grow. For centuries, people assumed that life began here, on Earth, in the warmth of its oceans or the bubbling cauldrons of volcanic vents. The idea was simple: given the right chemistry, life sparked into being. And yet, as scientists traced the complexity of DNA, proteins, and cellular machinery, the origin of that first spark became harder to explain. Life is intricate, almost improbably so. The more closely we study it, the more daunting the leap from non-life to life appears. This is where panspermia enters the story. The word means seeds everywhere. It is the idea that life may not have originated on Earth at all, but arrived here carried by comets, meteorites, or interstellar dust. Instead of being unique to this planet, life may be a cosmic traveler, drifting across the galaxy, waiting for a place to take root. The concept is not new. As early as the 5th century BCE, the Greek philosopher Anaxagoras suggested that life could be spread throughout the universe by invisible seeds. At the time, it was a poetic thought rather than a scientific one. But in the modern age, with rockets touching the edges of space and meteorites landing on Earth carrying complex molecules, panspermia has returned with a new seriousness. In 1969, a meteorite fell near the town of Murchison in Australia. When scientists studied it, they found that it contained amino acids, the very building blocks of proteins essential to life. Not just a few, but dozens, some rare on Earth. Since then, other space rocks have been found to carry organic compounds as well. These discoveries suggested that the chemistry of life is not confined to Earth's oceans. It is written into the cosmos itself. From there, the question deepens. If the building blocks are scattered across space, why not life itself? Could microbes, shielded within icy comets or inside rocks ejected from planets, survive journeys between worlds? Surprisingly, the answer may be yes. Experiments on the International Space Station have shown that certain bacteria and spores can endure radiation, vacuum, and freezing temperatures for long periods. Hidden within a protective rock, some life forms could survive millions of years, traveling across the void until they land on a hospitable planet. This possibility unsettles the boundary between Earth life and alien life. If the first spark did not ignite here but arrived from elsewhere, then in a sense we are already aliens. Our lineage, our DNA, would trace not to the soil of this planet, but to the wider galaxy. Earth would be our cradle, but not our origin. Among the strongest voices for this idea was Francis Crick, one of the scientists who discovered the structure of DNA. In 1973, Crick and biochemist Leslie Orgel proposed something even more provocative: directed panspermia. Instead of life arriving by accident on comets, they suggested it could have been intentionally sent. Perhaps an advanced civilization, far older than ours, seeded worlds with microbial life, sending capsules of DNA or spores across interstellar distances. If so, then humanity might be part of a project far beyond our comprehension, the descendants of a cosmic intention. Crick was cautious. He never claimed to know that this happened, only that it was a possibility worth considering. But the idea lingers like an echo. What if the very act of being alive is evidence not of chance, but of design carried across the stars? Think about this the next time you see a shooting star. What looks like a fleeting streak of light could, in another time and place, have been a vessel of possibility, a spark of life falling into a barren world. Some may burn, vanish, leave no trace. But perhaps, once in a very long while, one finds the right conditions, the right waters, the right balance of warmth and chemistry. And there, life begins again. Speculation takes us further still. What if panspermia is not a rare accident, but a common process, a cycle as natural as rain on Earth? Comets carrying organics could seed countless planets. Life could emerge again and again, not as a miracle, but as the universe's way of ensuring continuity. In this view, Earth is not unique, but one garden among many, sprouting from the same cosmic soil. And yet, we cannot avoid the more daring thought. What if the seeding was deliberate? What if advanced beings, perhaps long extinct, spread life as a way of surviving their own impermanence? To send DNA across space would be to send a kind of memory, a continuation. If civilizations rise and fall, if planets are destroyed, the code of life might still travel, waiting for another chance. In that light, humanity could be seen as a fragment of someone else's story. We might be the children of a species we no longer remember, carrying their signature in our very cells. Perhaps that is why our leaps in cognition and culture feel so abrupt, as if we are remembering rather than inventing. Perhaps what we call human uniqueness is not uniqueness at all, but inheritance. And here, a curious parallel emerges. Ancient myths often speak of beings who came from the sky to shape or teach humanity. The gods of Egypt, the star ancestors of indigenous traditions, the teachers of wisdom in Mesoamerican legends, they are described as descending, offering knowledge, and then vanishing. Could these stories be distant echoes of a truth? Perhaps not visitors arriving in ships, but memories of a deeper origin, that we ourselves arrived from the stars. Even if we dismiss the myths and cling only to science, the puzzle remains. The origin of life on Earth is still unsolved. Did it arise here, in tidal pools and volcanic vents, or did it arrive carried on ice and rock from beyond? We do not yet know. But each meteorite that falls, each experiment showing microbes surviving in space, tilts the question further toward possibility. It is humbling to imagine. You, listening now, are made of cells that read a code. That code may have begun not in Earth's oceans, but in the heart of another world, long ago, far away. Perhaps your body remembers what your mind cannot, the feel of another sky, the warmth of another Sunday. And if panspermia is true, then life is not local but cosmic, not bound to Earth but seeded throughout the galaxy, waiting in silence for each world to awaken. Before we can explore the possibility of humanity as a deliberate seeding, not only life arriving here by accident, but our very species planted with intention, we must pause. Because if the universe is carrying seeds, scattered like starlight, then we must ask, who is scattering them, and for what purpose? If we accept that the cosmos may be full of drifting seeds, then the question shifts from accident to intention. Could life on Earth, and perhaps even humanity itself, have been placed here not by chance but by design? Imagine an advanced species, far older than us, looking out at the stars and deciding to ensure that their story would not end with the collapse of their own world. Instead of building monuments in stone, they wrote in molecules, packing strands of DNA or its precursors into protective vessels and casting them into space like messages in bottles. The concept might sound like science fiction, but in a sense, it is only an extension of what we ourselves have already begun. Humanity has sent golden records aboard Voyager, inscribed with the sounds of earth greetings in dozens of languages. Music, the pulse of a heart, the sound of wind and rain. We have etched messages on plaques, bolted them to spacecraft, and launched them into the vast unknown with the hope, however faint, that someone might find them. Today, scientists discuss storing DNA in synthetic capsules, capable of surviving for millions of years, carrying our biological essence beyond Earth. If we can imagine it, why could others not have done the same long before us, long beyond our memory? Consider what such an act would mean. To seed a distant world is to gamble on time itself. The senders would know they might never see the results. It would be a gesture of continuity, of trust in the universe. To them, the recipients us would be strangers, yet also kin. We might carry their codes without ever knowing their names. Speculative as it is, there are patterns in human history that seem to echo this possibility. Across cultures, myths describe ancestors who arrived from the stars, who brought knowledge, who taught agriculture, astronomy, or law, and then departed. The Dogon people of Mali tell of beings from Sirius. Ancient Egypt spoke of gods descending from the sky to establish order. In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, is remembered as a civilizing teacher who came from beyond. Perhaps these stories are only metaphors, or perhaps they are faint memories of a truth too distant to hold clearly. That we ourselves are the result of a deliberate gift from elsewhere. And here, science offers an unexpected mirror. When geneticists trace the origins of humanity, they find sudden leaps and strange seams. Chromosome 2, fused neatly where 2 once were. FOXP2, unlocking the ability of language. Bursts of symbolic thought, art, and mathematics arising seemingly all at once. It is not proof, but it is suggestive, like footprints in sand half erased by the tide. They hint at intervention, at something nudging the story forward. If humanity was deliberately seeded, perhaps these genetic markers are the signatures left behind, fragments of an older knowledge woven into our very being. But what of memory? If we are descendants of colonists from beyond, why do we not remember? Why do we feel at once so at home on Earth and yet so restless, always staring upward? One possibility is that forgetting was inevitable. Millions of years of adaptation would erase the details. Language shifts, stories fragment, continents drift. What survives might only be the ache, the myth, the dream. Another possibility is that forgetting was intentional, that the senders wished their descendants to grow freely, to rediscover rather than inherit. A kind of cosmic childhood in which we are left to make our own meaning, even if it means losing sight of our origins. It is worth reflecting here on the way human beings carry knowledge. We are capable of remarkable preservation, libraries, archives, digital memory banks, and yet, within only a few generations, entire worlds of knowledge can vanish. Languages go extinct, cities crumble, books burn. How much more fragile would memory be stretched across millennia, across worlds? If an earlier civilization seeded us here, perhaps they left behind nothing but the code of life, trusting it to outlast all other records. Imagine them, a people facing the twilight of their own world, whether through natural disaster, war, or the slow fading of their star. Perhaps their skies were already dimming, their oceans receding, their cities sinking under dust. And yet, instead of surrendering to silence, they turned to the smallest canvas with the longest reach, DNA. Encoded within those spirals, they hid the essence of what they were: not their technology, not their monuments, but their potential. They sent it outward, scattered across light years, in the hope that somewhere, someday, it would bloom again. And here we are, sitting beneath the night sky, asking if we are the bloom. Speculation carries us further still. What if advanced species did not only seed life, but seeded intelligence itself? Perhaps they learned that to create kin across the stars, it was not enough to send microbes. They had to send the possibility of thought, of self-awareness, of curiosity. If so, then our capacity for imagination may itself be their legacy, the very part of us that wonders about them, reaching back across the void of time. It is humbling to think that what feels most human, the ability to tell stories, to long for the stars, to ask unanswerable questions, might not be entirely ours. It could be the echo of an intention older than Earth, written into us so that one day, when we were ready, we would remember to look up and wonder. And yet, this raises an even deeper question. If we are seeded, what of others? Are there siblings scattered across the galaxy, carrying the same code in different variations? Perhaps somewhere on a distant world, another branch of the same genetic tree has taken root, growing into a civilization we cannot yet imagine. Perhaps when we look into the cosmos, searching for signals, we are searching not for strangers, but for family. This speculation is vast, but it need not feel distant. It touches the smallest details of your life. When you breathe, when you dream, when you hold the hand of someone you love, the code guiding all of that may be part of a story that began long before Earth. You are not just a descendant of apes or even of stardust, but perhaps of intention, of choice, of a message sent across galaxies. And so, as you listen now, consider that the mystery of human origins may not be confined to fossils or genes or even to this planet. It may stretch outward into a cosmos that is itself alive with memory. If we are the descendants of deliberate seeding, then every heartbeat is a continuation of a story too vast to see, but intimate enough to live within you. From here, the path leads naturally into myth, into the stories humanity has always told about our beginnings. Because long before science spoke of chromosomes and DNA, our ancestors were already whispering of sky beings, of gods from the stars, of knowledge given and forgotten. Perhaps those myths are not just imagination. Perhaps they are the first faint stirrings of memory. Long before telescopes, satellites, or genetic sequencing, humanity looked upward and found stories in the stars. The night sky was a canvas, and on it people painted their origins, their gods, their ancestors. These stories, scattered across continents and cultures, share a curious similarity. Again and again, they speak of beings who came from above, who shaped humanity, who left behind knowledge before retreating into the heavens. Among the most striking are the traditions of indigenous peoples around the world. In the Americas, countless nations speak of sky people, beings who descended from the stars, sometimes to guide, sometimes to test, always to shape the destiny of those below. The Lakota tell of star nations, cosmic relatives who watch and sometimes intervene. The Cherokee recall ancestors arriving from the Pleiades, a cluster of stars also revered in stories from Japan to the South Pacific. In Australia, the Yolngu people speak of the Jangawul, ancestral beings who came from the east, across the sea and the sky, bringing lore and ceremony to the land. These are not isolated tales. They echo across distance and time, as though humanity, wherever it settled, carried with it a memory of origins that did not begin here. In West Africa, the Dogon people hold one of the most enigmatic traditions. For centuries they have spoken of beings called the Nommo, who descended from the sky and taught humanity about the stars. The Dogon describe Sirius, the brightest star in our night sky, not as a single light, but as a system of stars, Sirius A, accompanied by a dense, invisible companion they call Potolo. For generations they told of its orbit, its heaviness, its cycle, long before modern astronomy confirmed the existence of Sirius B, a white dwarf star invisible to the naked eye. How could such precise knowledge have been preserved in oral tradition? Skeptics suggest coincidence or contamination from outside contact. But to the Dogon themselves, it is memory passed down from their star ancestors. In Egypt, the gods themselves were often described as beings from the heavens. Osiris, Isis, Horus figures who shaped the laws of life, death, and rebirth were said to have descended from the stars. The pyramids, massive in their scale and aligned with celestial precision, seem to reflect this origin story. The three great pyramids of Giza are arranged to mirror the stars of Orion's belt, pointing upward, as if to remind those who stood on the desert sands of a connection not to the earth, but to the sky. The Egyptian Book of the Dead even speaks of the pharaoh joining the gods in the stars, becoming one with Orion and Sirius, as if human destiny was always to return to the heavens from which it came. The resonance of these stories is not limited to one region. In Mesoamerica, the Maya spoke of their gods descending from the heavens to guide humanity through cycles of time. The Inca of the Andes believed their first king, Manco Capac, came from the sun itself. Across Polynesia, myths tell of ancestors who sailed not only oceans but stars, guided by constellations as if following pathways home. In nearly every culture, the sky is not simply background, it is origin. What are we to make of this? Anthropologists often explain such myths as metaphor. The stars are distant, eternal, mysterious, so it is natural to place gods and ancestors among them. But there is another possibility. What if these stories are not inventions but memories? What if they are fragments of something once known, once common, now surviving only in the form of myth? Imagine a civilization long ago, one that understood that humans had been seeded here, that our origins stretched beyond Earth. Imagine their descendants, thousands of years later, carrying echoes of that knowledge in their stories. Over generations, memory becomes myth, myth becomes legend, legend becomes religion. The details shift, but the core remains. We came from the stars, and one day we may return. There is also the question of knowledge that seems too advanced for its time. Astronomical alignments in ancient monuments, Stonehenge pointing to solstices, the Mayan temples aligned with Venus, the great Zimbabwe ruins echoing celestial patterns suggest a precision beyond simple survival needs. These people were not only farmers or hunters, they were sky watchers, mapping the heavens as though in remembrance of a deeper connection. Perhaps this was not advanced knowledge invented from nothing, but remembered echoes of cycles long before, when such knowledge was common. Speculation deepens here. If myths are memory, then humanity's fascination with the stars is not simply wonder, but longing. When we speak of gods descending from Orion or ancestors sailing from the Pleiades, we may be describing the faint recollection of where we began. The stories are not uniform, but their chorus is striking. Again and again, across oceans and continents, humans tell themselves that they are not children of Earth alone. Think of your own experience gazing at the stars. That pull, that sense of vastness mixed with belonging, is something nearly everyone feels. It is not just awe, it is intimacy, as though something in us recognizes the sky not only as mystery, but as home. Could that recognition be biological, written into the same DNA that carries traces of panspermia and genetic fusion? Could our myths of star ancestors be the narrative form of the same truth our cells already carry? Of course, science requires caution. Correlations are not proof. Oral traditions shift. Alignments can be explained. Myths evolve with culture. But in the quiet hours of reflection, it is worth asking why so many peoples across so many ages told the same kind of story. If humanity were entirely earthborn, one might expect more diversity in origin myths, tales rooted in soil, sea, or mountain. Instead, again and again, the sky is where we place our beginnings. This pattern suggests that memory and imagination are not separate, they are intertwined. The myths may be our earliest attempt to preserve something we felt but could not explain, that our true ancestors were not only the apes who walked before us, but perhaps the starfarers who seeded us here, whose story we carry in fragments of song and story, cave art and temple stone. And so, as we wander deeper into this question, myth becomes less a distraction from science and more a companion to it. The genetic puzzles, the sudden leaps in cognition, the possibility of panspermia, they are mirrored in the stories of gods descending, ancestors teaching, knowledge once common and then forgotten. Both strands, science and story, are pointing in the same direction, upward, toward the stars. From here, the path does not end. It unfolds further into the ways those gods and star beings were remembered not only as ancestors, but as founders, shapers of humanity itself. In nearly every corner of human history, gods are remembered not only as distant overseers but as active shapers of life, culture, and even humanity itself. They do not remain in the heavens, aloof and unreachable. Instead, they descend, they walk among us. They build, they teach, they shape, and then they depart, leaving behind civilizations that rise on their foundations and myths that echo their presence. Consider the Greeks. Their pantheon is filled with deities who blurred the line between human and divine. Zeus, the thunder-wielding king of Olympus, was said to descend to earth, disguising himself, mingling with mortals, fathering lineages, and altering destinies. To the Greeks, these were not metaphors but histories, stories woven into their identity. Behind the lightning and grandeur, one can see a pattern, a powerful being descending from above, reshaping humanity's course, and then retreating to the sky. Could this be an echo of an older memory, distorted across time, a recollection of star ancestors cast into myth? In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, was remembered as a bringer of knowledge. He is not only a god but a teacher credited with giving maize to the people, teaching them astronomy, medicine, and writing. He is described as arriving from elsewhere and promising one day to return. The story is rich in symbolism, but beneath its layers lies a familiar theme, a figure descending from beyond, shaping culture, and vanishing into the sky. If Quetzalcoatl was once a mythologized memory of visitors or ancestors from the stars, then his teachings may be the faded fragments of advanced knowledge once common, later remembered as divine gift. High in the Andes, the Inca told of Viracocha, the great creator. He was said to emerge from Lake Titicaca in a time of darkness, bringing light, order, and humanity itself. He wandered among the people, teaching them arts, sciences, and laws before disappearing across the ocean, promising to return in an age to come. Again, the motif repeats, a founder figure, not of earthly origin, shaping humanity and then vanishing. Why does this pattern appear in culture after culture, continent after continent? Skeptics might say such stories are simply archetypal humanity, personifying the forces of creation, turning memory of leaders or teachers into divine figures. But the recurrence of skyward origin, of beings who descend, of knowledge far beyond the needs of survival, raises another possibility. These myths may not be invention, but distortion. Memories of real encounters, preserved imperfectly, reshaped by time, but still carrying the outlines of something true, that we were visited, perhaps even founded, by beings from beyond. Look closer at what these gods are remembered for. They do not simply demand worship, they teach. They bring agriculture, architecture, astronomy. They instruct humanity in building temples aligned with solstices, pyramids pointing to Orion, calendars mapping the cycles of Venus. This knowledge appears fully formed, as if inherited rather than discovered. What if it was? What if it was once common knowledge, passed down from star ancestors who knew more than Earth could teach at the time? It is tempting to imagine this as a golden age, a time when the line between divine and human was thin, when the knowledge of the stars was not speculation but memory. But if that is true, then why did it fade? Why do we now remember only fragments? Perhaps because the founders did not intend for their knowledge to remain whole. Perhaps they wished us to rediscover, to climb anew, to seek the stars in our own time. Or perhaps it was simply the erosion of centuries, the loss that comes when floods, wars, and silence bury too much too quickly. Consider also how these gods are often linked with promises of return: Quetzalcoatl departing eastward, Viracocha crossing the ocean, even Zeus retreating to Olympus, watching, intervening occasionally but never gone. Across cultures, the pattern is not only descent but also expectation. The gods will come again. Could this be mythological language for something deeper, a genetic or cultural memory that humanity itself came from beyond, and that our destiny is to return? And if so, then perhaps our longing for the stars, our instinct to build telescopes and rockets, to send probes outward, is not only curiosity but inheritance, a seed planted long ago by founders who knew that one day their descendants would feel the call to rise. Speculation can carry us further still. Imagine that humanity is not Earth's first advanced species but one of many cycles. Perhaps in earlier ages, beings from beyond seeded not just microbes but civilizations, guiding them until they could stand on their own. Those cycles may have risen, fallen, been erased by ice ages, asteroids, or tectonic shifts. What survives is myth: Zeus with his thunderbolt, Quetzalcoatl with his maze, Viracocha with his light-distorted echoes of beings whose true origins lie not in metaphor but in the stars. It is possible, of course, to interpret all of this as symbolic: Zeus as power, Quetzalcoatl as wisdom, Viracocha as order. But the persistence of these founder figures across the world suggests something more. If humanity, across oceans and centuries, always imagined that we were taught from above, could it be because we were? Could the myths be fragments of a story older than civilization, older than history, older even than memory? Pause and picture it. A night thousands of years ago, a small community gathers under a sky untouched by city lights. They look upward and see not only stars but meaning. They tell stories of beings who once descended, who walked among their ancestors, who left them with fire, food, or knowledge of the heavens. As the stories are passed on, generation by generation, the details shift. Gods become serpents, or kings, or bearded men crossing the sea. But beneath the shifts, the pattern holds. We were shaped, not alone, but with help. We were founded, not only by Earth, but by something beyond. And so the myths remain with us, etched into temples, carved into stone, whispered in chants and prayers. They are not proof, but they are testimony. Testimony that humanity has always felt itself tied to the stars, not only as a place of mystery, but as a place of origin. From here, the path leads forward again. If we are to understand what makes humanity so unusual, so out of place, we must look not only at the stories of gods and ancestors, but at ourselves, at the very traits of our species that set us apart from all other life on Earth. From here, the path leads forward again. If we are to understand what makes humanity so unusual, so out of place, we must look not only at the stories of gods and ancestors, but at ourselves, the bodies we inhabit, the lives we live, the strange balance of fragility and brilliance that defines our species. Compared to the wild animals around us, humans are remarkably fragile. Our skin tears easily, offering little protection against claw or tooth. Our senses are duller than those of many creatures. Our night vision pales against that of the cat. Our sense of smell is faint compared to the dog. Our hearing less acute than the bat's. We lack fur thick enough to shield us from cold, or claws sharp enough to defend ourselves. Even our endurance, though respectable over long distances, is clumsy compared to the speed of predators or the agility of prey. On the surface, we seem ill-suited to survival in a world of wilderness and danger, and yet, somehow, we prevailed. Perhaps most striking is our long, vulnerable childhood. Human infants are born helpless, unable to walk or feed themselves, reliant for years upon constant care. In the animal kingdom, this is unusual. A foal can stand within hours. A chimpanzee learns to cling tightly within days. But a human child requires a decade or more before reaching true independence. From an evolutionary perspective, this is costly. Vulnerability invites risk, and yet, paradoxically, it is this very helplessness that may have allowed us to grow into who we are. For during those long years, the human brain expands, connections form, and capacities emerge that no other species can match. Our brains themselves are oversized, disproportionate to our bodies. They demand immense energy, consuming nearly 20% of our resting metabolism. They make childbirth dangerous, as the skull must pass through a narrow birth canal before it is fully formed, forcing infants to be born earlier and more fragile than most animals. It is as though evolution pressed humanity into a precarious balance, brains too large for comfort, bodies too fragile for the wilderness, yet minds capable of reshaping the very world that seemed to overwhelm them. Add to this our weak instincts. Many animals are born with knowledge already in place, a spider spinning its web, a bird building its nest, a turtle scrambling instinctively toward the sea. Humans, in contrast, must learn almost everything. We are not born knowing how to hunt, how to build, how to navigate. We rely instead on culture, on teaching, on the passing of knowledge from one generation to the next. And in that reliance, we are strangely dependent yet uniquely powerful. These traits, fragile bodies, long childhoods, oversized brains, weak instincts, make us seem almost maladapted, as though Earth is not perfectly fitted to us. Some scientists suggest that these are simply the costs of our intelligence, the trade-offs that come with a large brain and a flexible culture. But others have wondered if the mismatch is more profound. What if humanity is not fully adapted to Earth because we did not entirely originate here? Consider the environments of this planet. Our skin burns under direct sun, unlike most mammals that carry fur or pigmentation suited to their climates. We struggle with vitamin deficiencies unless we balance diet carefully, requiring nutrients like vitamin C that many other animals produce internally. We suffer from chronic ailments like back pain. The strain of upright posture on a spine evolved from quadrupeds. Even childbirth itself is a trial, more dangerous than in nearly any other species, because of the size of the human head. These difficulties have led some researchers to speculate that humanity is, in some ways, mismatched to this planet. Perhaps we evolved under different conditions, on a world with gentler sunlight, lighter gravity, or more abundant nutrients. Or perhaps we carry traits designed for a purpose beyond survival in wilderness, traits that suggest we were shaped not only for Earth, but for something else. Speculation takes this further still. What if the gods remembered in myth were not only founders, but genetic engineers, adjusting humanity to thrive just enough on Earth while preserving the traits needed for something greater? Our fragility might then be no accident, but a sign of deliberate adaptation, a reminder that our true home lies elsewhere. Our long childhoods could be designed to allow the flowering of culture and learning, ensuring that knowledge once common could be rebuilt anew. Our oversized brains might be the seed of memory itself, carrying echoes of cycles long forgotten. Imagine that advanced knowledge was once shared freely, part of daily life, and that as humanity descended into forgetfulness, these physical traits remained as reminders, fragile bodies needing tools, long childhoods needing guidance, weak instincts requiring culture. In this sense, our very deficiencies are what drive us toward invention, cooperation, and imagination. They push us to rediscover what may once have been common knowledge, to reach again for the stars. The thought is haunting, that our weaknesses are not flaws but signs, that our awkward place in the animal kingdom is not an accident, but an intention. That by seeming out of place, we are reminded to look beyond this place. And when you reflect on it, humanity's out-of-place nature is not only biological but also cultural. We build shelters not only for warmth but for beauty. We grow food not only for survival but for flavor, ritual, and art. We gaze at stars not only for navigation but for meaning. We are creatures who take what is necessary and make it symbolic, who transform survival into story. Perhaps this is the most alien trait of all, to live not only in the world, but also in imagined worlds layered above it. From here, another question emerges. If humanity seems mismatched to Earth, what else in our condition might reveal that? Our illnesses, our chronic pains, our peculiar nutritional needs, they too may hold clues, whispering that we were shaped for another environment, another world, before finding ourselves here. From here, another question emerges. If humanity seems mismatched to Earth, what else in our condition might reveal that? Our illnesses, our chronic pains, our peculiar nutritional needs, they too may hold clues, whispering that we were shaped for another environment, another world, before finding ourselves here. Take the human spine. It is a marvel of balance, a column of bone that allows us to walk upright, freeing our hands for tools, our eyes for the horizon. And yet, it is also one of our greatest vulnerabilities. Back pain afflicts millions, so common it is almost considered normal. Discs slip, vertebrae compress, nerves flare with discomfort. Evolutionary biologists suggest this is the cost of bipedalism, of a body still adapting from four-legged ancestors. But others see in this pain a deeper mismatch, as if the human spine was not built for Earth's gravity. Imagine, for a moment, that our bodies were shaped on a world with slightly lower gravity, where standing upright placed less strain, where walking tall was easier. On Earth, that same design becomes prone to collapse. Our pain may be a kind of message, written in bone and nerve, reminding us of an origin elsewhere. Childbirth offers another striking example. In most species, giving birth is straightforward, rarely fatal. But for humans, childbirth is fraught with danger. The oversized head of the infant, shaped by our enlarged brains, must pass through a birth canal barely wide enough to allow it. The process is painful, often requiring assistance, and throughout history it has claimed countless lives. If natural selection shaped us solely for survival on Earth, why would such a dangerous design endure? One possibility is that we are caught between two worlds carrying traits suited for larger brains, perhaps seeded deliberately, while still constrained by bodies inherited from an older lineage. Childbirth becomes not just a biological struggle, but evidence of a design that does not fully fit its environment. Our nutritional needs deepen the puzzle. Unlike many animals, humans cannot produce vitamin C internally. We must consume it in fruits, vegetables, or other sources, or suffer scurvy, a disease that once decimated sailors who lost access to fresh produce. Most mammals synthesize vitamin C naturally, their bodies producing what they need without thought. Why not us? Why would a species so fragile in other ways be denied such a simple protection? Some suggest this trait points to an origin in an environment where vitamin C was so abundant that losing the ability to make it posed no risk. If that environment was not Earth, then perhaps our dependence on external sources is a lingering reminder of another home. There are other oddities. Our skin is prone to sunburn, especially in regions with intense solar radiation. Our teeth suffer from decay, unlike those of many wild animals. We develop chronic conditions, allergies, autoimmune disorders, metabolic imbalances that seem less like adaptive features and more like flaws in the system. To some, these are just the messy results of evolution, trial and error across ages, but to others, they are hints of displacement, signs that our design may have fit better elsewhere. Speculation invites us to see these weaknesses differently. What if our ailments are not flaws but evidence? Back pain as memory of lighter gravity. Childbirth struggles as the mark of oversized brains, perhaps gifted or engineered. Vitamin deficiencies as reminders of another ecosystem where abundance was assumed. If so, then the human body is not simply a product of this earth, but a traveler wearing an ill-fitting suit, shaped elsewhere and struggling to adapt here. And yet, paradoxically, these very weaknesses drive our ingenuity. Because our spines ache, we invent chairs and therapies. Because childbirth is dangerous, we develop midwifery, medicine, surgery. Because our diets lack essentials, we learn agriculture, preservation, trade. Each frailty pushes us toward culture, cooperation, and innovation. Perhaps this too was intended. Perhaps those who seeded or shaped us knew that weakness would be the mother of invention, that suffering would drive us to create, to remember knowledge once common and rediscover it anew. Think of it this way. Animals perfectly adapted to their environments have little need to change. They survive, they persist, they remain as they are. But humanity, never fully at home, restless in body and mind, is compelled to build, to shelter, to heal, to question, to explore. Our very out-of-placeness is what sets us in motion. Could this be the sign of deliberate design, a subtle shaping that ensured we would always reach for more? There is also the strange universality of dreams and myths about other worlds. People across cultures have imagined skies with twin suns, lands where pain and illness do not exist, golden ages where life was easier. Could these be not only wishes, but memories? Could they be the subconscious voice of bodies remembering conditions they were once suited for, but no longer find here? The possibility is haunting, that our pain is a kind of homesickness, not for another time, but for another planet. That every backache, every difficult birth, every nutrient we must search for in food is a small whisper from a forgotten origin. And yet, there is beauty in this perspective. For if our ailments are reminders of displacement, they are also reminders of resilience. Despite the mismatch, despite the fragility, humanity has survived, adapted, and flourished. We are creatures who carry discomfort but turn it into progress, who transform weakness into culture, who take the flaws of our bodies and build worlds of meaning around them. Perhaps that too is part of the design. From here, the question naturally expands. If our biology carries signs of being out of place, and our pain whispers of another world, then what of our minds? Why are we so drawn to the stars, so restless on this planet, so certain that our home lies somewhere beyond? From here, the question naturally expands. If our biology carries signs of being out of place, and our pain whispers of another world, then what of our minds? Why are we so drawn to the stars, so restless on this planet, so certain that our home lies somewhere beyond? From the earliest moments of recorded history, humanity has gazed upward and found meaning there. The night sky is, after all, the one constant shared across every culture. Oceans divide, mountains isolate, languages splinter, but the stars remain. They shine down on deserts and forests, tundra and islands, always visible, always mysterious. To our ancestors, the heavens were more than backdrop. They were maps, calendars, temples of memory. The stars guided migration routes, planting seasons, stories of origin. Even before the first city rose, the sky was already a home for the human imagination. Look to the monuments of the past, and you see this longing carved in stone. The pyramids of Giza aligned with Orion's belt, Stonehenge positioned to mark solstices, its great stones casting shadows that chart the turning of the year. The temples of the Maya, aligned with Venus, built not only for ritual but for precise astronomical observation. Across continents, ancient builders looked upward and shaped the earth below to mirror the heavens above. It was as though they were trying to anchor themselves to the stars, to remind future generations that our story was not limited to the soil beneath our feet. Even today, in an age of city lights and satellites, the pull of the sky remains. Children lie on their backs in fields and dream of flight. Astronomers dedicate lifetimes to charting galaxies. Artists and poets weave constellations into metaphor. Lovers compare each other to stars, and astronauts risk their lives to float beyond the atmosphere. It is not just curiosity, it is instinct, a deep, persistent longing for something we cannot name but feel intimately. Why should this be so? Most animals, after all, look downward to food, to ground, to survival. But humans look upward. We chart not only the sun, which governs our days, but distant stars that hold no practical bearing on survival. Why invest such effort in tracking them, aligning temples to them, shaping myths around them? Perhaps because we recognize them. Perhaps because something in us knows that they are not foreign but familiar. Speculation turns this longing into memory. What if our fascination with stars is not invention, but inheritance? What if it is the echo of ancestors who once lived among them, who once navigated not only seas but galaxies? Imagine that in some forgotten cycle, humanity or its predecessors looked out at the sky, not with wonder, but with recognition. When we gaze upward now, we may be reliving that memory, the pull of a home we no longer remember clearly. Consider flight itself. For most of history, humans dreamed of soaring like birds. Myths abound. Icarus with his wings of wax, shamans transforming into eagles, gods who descend from the heavens on feathered wings. Even before it was possible, the dream persisted. When flight was finally achieved, first with fragile gliders, then with roaring engines, humanity did not stop. The skies were not enough. We leapt further, building rockets, stepping onto the moon, sending machines outward into the solar system. It is as though the dream of flight was never about air alone, but about returning to the stars. The persistence of star alignment in ancient monuments deepens the mystery. The great Zimbabwe ruins point to celestial markers. The Serpent Mound in Ohio seems to track solstices. The Nabta Playa stone circle in the Sahara predates Stonehenge, aligned with Orion and Sirius. Why such precision? Why such effort? Perhaps the builders were not only observing but remembering, encoding into stone the knowledge that the stars were not simply distant fires, but part of our origin. Perhaps this was advanced knowledge once common, preserved in the only way it could be. Through monumental architecture that would outlast the erosion of memory. Even our languages carry the mark of the sky. Words like inspiration and aspiration share roots with breath and to rise. To aspire is to reach upward, not only socially but cosmically. To be inspired is to be filled with something that comes, symbolically, from above. Poetry, prayer, philosophy all lean upward, as though the sky itself is the reservoir from which human imagination drinks. Modern science, too, cannot resist the call. Astronomy has become one of the most advanced fields of human knowledge, mapping billions of stars, charting exoplanets, seeking signs of life. Why dedicate such effort to a pursuit with no immediate survival benefit? Perhaps because it is not optional. Perhaps because, written into our DNA, into the very fabric of our minds, is the certainty that the sky is not foreign territory but our true home. This longing is not without consequence. It drives exploration, but it also drives myth. Civilizations across time have told stories of returning to the stars, of gods who will one day descend again, of cycles of departure and return. The sky is not just where we come from, but where we are destined to go. Speculation makes this longing sharper still. What if humanity is not merely earth-born but earth-placed, seeded or guided here temporarily, with the expectation that one day we would seek to leave? If so, then our fascination with stars is not idle but essential. It is the seed of destiny. A reminder, faint but persistent, that we are meant to journey outward again. Pause here and imagine yourself standing outside on a clear night. The air is cool. The stars spread across the sky like a map too vast to read. In that moment, you are not just a person looking up. You are the descendant of countless generations who looked up before you, who aligned stones and temples, who told stories of gods and ancestors, who dreamed of wings and ships. You are participating in a memory that stretches beyond history, beyond Earth, perhaps beyond this solar system itself. If the sky is our true home, then our journey here on Earth is both gift and exile. We are nurtured by this planet, but restless upon it, always leaning upward, always listening for the call of something greater. From here, the thread of story carries us naturally into prophecy, into the myths not only of origin, but of return. For if humanity remembers, even faintly, that our home lies among the stars, then it is no surprise that our stories so often tell of gods, ancestors, and star beings who will one day come back. From here, the thread of story carries us naturally into prophecy, into the myths not only of origin, but of return. For if humanity remembers, even faintly, that our home lies among the stars, then it is no surprise that our stories so often tell of gods, ancestors, and star beings who will one day come back. Across cultures, prophecies of return echo like refrains from a forgotten song. In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, was said to have departed eastward, promising to return in a future age. His absence was not an ending, but an intermission, a pause in a story that would one day resume. The Spanish arrival in the 16th century was tragically misinterpreted through this prophecy, a reminder of how deeply the expectation of return was woven into the worldview of the people. The myth was not just about the past, it was about the future, about a reunion with something once lost. The Inca carried a similar belief in Viracocha. After bringing light, order, and humanity itself, Viracocha was said to have walked westward across the ocean, vanishing into the horizon but leaving a promise of eventual return. In times of difficulty, the Inca recalled this prophecy, imagining that their founder would not abandon them forever. His return would be a restoration, a renewal, a cosmic homecoming. In Egypt, the pharaoh was more than a king. He was a bridge between heaven and earth. Upon death, he was believed to ascend to the stars, particularly to Orion and Sirius, joining the gods there. But this was not a one-way journey. Texts spoke of the pharaoh returning, of divine presence descending again to walk among the people. The cycle of ascent and return was written into the very architecture of the pyramids, aligned with the stars as if to serve as gateways for both departure and arrival. Even in Judeo-Christian traditions, the motif persists. The return of a messianic figure descending from the heavens to restore balance is central to the faith. Revelation speaks of a figure arriving in the clouds, a vision that resonates with earlier myths of gods returning from the sky. The longing is the same, humanity looking upward, expecting not only salvation but reunion with something once familiar. Indigenous traditions across the world echo this theme. Among the Lakota, the star nations are not only ancestors but relatives who will one day return to guide humanity again. The Hopi speak of cycles, of worlds created and destroyed, with star beings present at each turning point. Their prophecies speak of the Pahana, the true white brother, who would return from the stars to restore harmony. Why is this theme so universal? Why do cultures separated by oceans and centuries all expect a return? One explanation is psychological. People long for restoration, for guidance, for cosmic reassurance. But another possibility is more provocative. What if these myths are not only hopes but memories? What if they are the subconscious echo of an origin beyond Earth, carried forward in stories because our bodies remember what our conscious minds cannot? Speculation turns prophecy into inheritance. If humanity was seeded or shaped by beings from the stars, perhaps part of the design was to ensure we would never forget entirely. The expectation of return could be a genetic memory, a psychological imprint, a quiet pull that ensures we are always looking upward. It may not be literal, the gods may never descend in ships or on wings, but the yearning itself is the point. It drives us to seek, to wonder, to prepare for reunion. Perhaps this is why advanced knowledge once common is remembered as gift, as treasure, as something given and then withdrawn. The return of the gods would mean the return of that knowledge, a restoration of what was once ours. In this sense, prophecy is not only about beings but about memory, the return of wisdom we once held, the rediscovery of truths written into the stars. There is also the curious way in which these prophecies are often tied to times of change. The return of Quetzalcoatl was expected at the turning of an age. The Hopi prophecies speak of the end of one world and the beginning of another. The Book of Revelation describes apocalyptic transformation. Could it be that humanity instinctively senses cycles of rise and fall, of forgetting and remembering? Perhaps the return of the gods is less about external beings arriving and more about humanity itself awakening, rediscovering its own origin, and reclaiming what was once known. Picture, for a moment, humanity as a child separated from its parents. The myths of return are like bedtime promises. We will come back. We will not leave you forever. Over generations, the details blur, but the reassurance lingers. Humanity continues to look upward, waiting, hoping, not only for gods but for home. Even in our modern age, with satellites and space probes, the longing persists. Science tells us the stars are vast, the distance is unimaginable, and yet millions still believe in visitors, in encounters, in return. UFO sightings, abduction narratives, cosmic visions, whether literal or psychological, they reveal the same truth. We are waiting. We are expecting. We are convinced that the story is not finished. Speculation invites us to see this not as delusion but as continuity. What if humanity, unconsciously, is yearning for its origin world? What if our myths of return are not only stories but instincts, the same instincts that drive birds to migrate thousands of miles, remembering routes they have never flown? Perhaps deep within us is the certainty that we came from elsewhere and that one day, in one form or another, we will return. The universality of return prophecies suggests they are more than coincidence. They are reminders, soft and persistent, that humanity is a species in exile, always waiting for the moment when the exile ends. Whether through the descent of gods, the rise of knowledge, or our own journey back into the stars, the myth of return may yet be fulfilled. And so, as we carry this thought forward, the path opens again. If the sky is our true home, and our myths tell of return, then perhaps the clues of this origin are not only in story but in stone, in the traces of ancient civilizations and artifacts that seem out of place, as though they were fragments of another world. And so, as we carry this thought forward, the path opens again. If the sky is our true home, and our myths tell of return, then perhaps the clues of this origin are not only in story but in stone, in the traces of ancient civilizations and artifacts that seem out of place, as though they were fragments of another world. Consider the great megaliths that rise across the earth, remnants of cultures whose sophistication continues to puzzle us. At Stonehenge, massive stones weighing up to 25 tons were transported across miles of rugged landscape, set upright, and crowned with lintels so precisely balanced that they still stand today. But Stonehenge is more than a monument. Its stones are aligned with the solstices, marking the longest and shortest days of the year with astonishing accuracy. To the builders, the monument was both temple and calendar, a bridge between earth and sky. How did they, without advanced technology, measure the heavens so precisely? Perhaps they were not inventing from nothing but preserving knowledge, once common knowledge that whispered of a deeper connection to the stars. Travel south to the sands of Egypt, and the puzzle deepens. The pyramids of Giza, monumental in scale, remain some of the most studied and debated structures in the world. Their alignment is exact, their sides oriented almost perfectly to the cardinal directions. The three great pyramids mirror the stars of Orion's belt, as though their builders sought to etch the heavens onto the earth. Even the shafts within the pyramids are angled to point toward specific stars, reinforcing the idea that these were not only tombs but gateways designed to connect humanity with its cosmic origins. Could the precision of these alignments be echoes of advanced knowledge, remembered from a time when humanity was closer to the stars? In South America, the mysteries multiply. At Machu Picchu, the Inca built their citadel high in the Andes, aligning windows and stones with the solstices and equinoxes. At Tiwanaku, near Lake Titicaca, the Gate of the Sun is carved with intricate patterns that some believe mark astronomical cycles. The walls of Sacsayhuaman are made of stones so massive and so perfectly fitted that even today a blade of grass cannot pass between them. How did ancient builders achieve such precision, carving and transporting stones that modern machines would struggle to move? Mainstream archaeology suggests ingenuity, patience, and collective effort. But speculation allows another possibility, that this was the survival of advanced knowledge once common, carried forward like a fading torch across the centuries. Even in places less known, the pattern continues. The Nabta Playa stone circle in the Sahara Desert predates Stonehenge by thousands of years, aligned with Orion and Sirius. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, buried for millennia, reveals massive stone pillars arranged with celestial precision, dating back over 11,000 years, long before the rise of agriculture or cities. Its carvings depict animals, symbols, and perhaps constellations, suggesting a level of organization and cosmology that should not have existed in such an early age. These sites stand as anomalies, out of step with the linear progression of history, as though flashes of knowledge erupted suddenly, then faded, leaving behind only fragments in stone. If we step back and look at the whole, the pattern is unmistakable. Across continents, cultures separated by oceans, there are monuments aligned with the stars, structures built with precision that seems to exceed their time. Why this obsession with the heavens? Why such accuracy, such scale, such persistence? Archaeologists often point to practical explanations. The stars were calendars, vital for farming. The monuments were built by collective labor, driven by ritual and religion. These explanations are valid, but they do not fully answer the deeper question, why the stars? Why align temples not just with the sun or moon, but with distant constellations like Orion or Sirius stars that hold no immediate survival value? Speculation whispers a different answer. Perhaps these alignments are not simply symbolic, but reminders. Perhaps they are the physical record of knowledge inherited from elsewhere, from ancestors who remembered that our origins lie among the stars. If so, then the monuments are more than temples. They are messages carved in stone, saying, "Do not forget. Look upward. This is where you came from. This is where you will return." It is worth noting that many of these monuments appear suddenly, without clear precedents. The builders of Göbekli Tepe, for example, were hunter-gatherers, yet they raised megaliths with complex carvings and astronomical precision. How does such knowledge appear so abruptly? Was it innovation, or was it memory knowledge resurfacing after being forgotten, fragments of an older cycle re-emerging in a new age? The same question haunts the pyramids. Egyptologists trace their evolution from simpler mastabas to the Great Pyramids, but the leap in scale and precision remains staggering. It is as if the builders reached suddenly for the stars, guided by something more than trial and error. Could they have been preserving knowledge handed down from a time when such wisdom was commonplace? Even in myths tied to these monuments, the theme repeats. The Egyptians believed their gods descended from Orion and Sirius. The Maya said their ancestors came from the Pleiades. The builders of Stonehenge were remembered as having been guided by giants or magicians from elsewhere. These are not merely stories of stone, but stories of descent, of beings who brought knowledge with them. Speculation allows us to see archaeology's anomalies not as accidents but as evidence. The stones themselves may be fragments of memory, records of advanced knowledge once common, inherited imperfectly, preserved against the erosion of time. They remind us that history is not always linear, that perhaps humanity has risen and fallen before, each cycle leaving behind whispers in myth and stone. Imagine walking through one of these ancient sites at night. The stars are brilliant overhead, unclouded by modern lights. The stones cast shadows in silence. In that moment, you are not only a visitor, you are part of a continuum, a descendant of those who built with stone to remember the stars. Perhaps, without knowing it, you are answering the same instinct to look upward, to wonder where you belong, to carry forward the memory of origins that lie beyond Earth. From here, the question deepens further. If monuments can preserve memory in stone, what about smaller, stranger artifacts? Out-of-place objects that seem to belong to another time, another context, relics that may be fragments not only of human history, but of an alien past. From here, the question deepens further. If monuments can preserve memory in stone, what about smaller, stranger artifacts? Out-of-place objects that seem to belong to another time, another context, relics that may be fragments not only of human history, but of an alien past. These objects are often called OPARTs, out-of-place artifacts. They are the curiosities that do not fit neatly into the timeline we have drawn for ourselves. Some have been explained, dismissed, or exposed as hoaxes. Others remain stubborn, resisting categorization, like faint fingerprints left on the surface of history by hands we cannot see. Take, for instance, the Piri Reis map, drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral. At first glance, it is a product of its time, a chart for sailors. But look closer, and anomalies appear. The map seems to depict the coastlines of South America with striking accuracy, centuries before much of it was officially explored. More puzzling still, it appears to show Antarctica, not only ice-covered as we know it today, but with details suggesting an ice-free shoreline. If true, it would mean the map preserves knowledge of Antarctica's coast as it was tens of thousands of years ago, before the ice sheets fully formed. How could such knowledge exist? Some say it was copied from older charts, remnants of a forgotten civilization. But speculation asks, what if these charts were not only human memory, but fragments of knowledge inherited from beyond? Echoes of a cosmic origin preserved in ink. Then there are the Baghdad batteries, clay jars discovered in Iraq, dating back nearly 2,000 years. When reconstructed, they appear capable of generating a small electric current. Were they used for electroplating? For ritual? Or were they remnants of a technology we do not fully understand? If ancient people experimented with electricity long before modern science, perhaps they were not inventing from scratch, but remembering fragments of advanced knowledge once common, preserved imperfectly. Carvings, too, invite speculation. In the Temple of Seti at Abydos in Egypt, there are hieroglyphs that some interpret as resembling modern machines, a helicopter, an airplane, even a submarine. Mainstream scholars explain these as palimpsests, overlapping carvings that coincidentally resemble modern forms. But to those willing to wonder, they are haunting. Why should coincidences align so closely with technology millennia ahead of its time? Could these images be symbolic memories, faint echoes of cycles in which such machines once existed? The Antikythera mechanism, discovered in a shipwreck off Greece, deepens the mystery. Dating to the 12th century BCE, it is a complex device of gears and dials, capable of predicting eclipses, planetary motions, and calendar cycles. Its sophistication rivals clockwork not seen again until 1,000 years later. How could such precision exist in an age when iron tools were still rare? Was it an isolated genius or the survival of knowledge from a forgotten source? If the latter, then perhaps it is not just a Greek artifact, but a fragment of something older, a memory of star knowledge once shared, now disguised in bronze. Other artifacts blur the line between legend and science. Ancient carvings in Mesoamerica depict what some interpret as astronauts or spacecraft. Stone spheres in Costa Rica, perfectly round and scattered across the landscape, defy easy explanation. In India, texts like the Vedas and Mahabharata describe flying machines called vimanas, armed with weapons of terrible power. Are these metaphors? Or are they distorted memories, fragments of a time when such knowledge existed not as story but as reality? Skeptics are quick to dismiss such artifacts as coincidence, exaggeration, or misinterpretation, and in many cases they may be right. But what matters here is not proving or disproving, but listening to what the anomalies suggest, that our history may not be as linear, as simple, as we think. The artifacts are like whispers in a language we no longer speak, reminders that knowledge rises, fades, and sometimes resurfaces in unexpected places. Speculation takes us further. If humanity was seeded or guided by beings from beyond, then perhaps they left behind more than DNA. Perhaps they left tools, maps, devices not as gifts, but as breadcrumbs, clues for us to find when we were ready. The Piri-Reis map, the Antikythera mechanism, the Baghdad batteries, could these be fragments of memory left deliberately, waiting like stars in the darkness to guide us forward? Imagine walking into an ancient temple, torchlight flickering across walls covered in carvings. You see animals, gods, symbols, and then something that looks like a machine, a vessel, a star. Your rational mind says coincidence. But something deeper stirs, a sense of recognition. You do not know why, but you feel that what you are seeing is not only story, but memory. Perhaps that is how the ancients themselves felt preserving these images, these fragments, because they knew they carried meaning beyond their time. Even the very idea of parts may itself be evidence of memory. For what are these artifacts if not reminders that humanity carries fragments of knowledge out of step with its own history? Each one is like a shard of glass from a shattered mirror, reflecting a glimpse of something larger, older, beyond. And so, the question is not only whether these artifacts are real or misinterpreted. The question is, why does humanity produce them at all? Why do we find maps ahead of their time, machines too complex for their age, carvings that resemble technologies we only now recognize? Perhaps because knowledge, once common, never disappears entirely. It lingers, resurfaces, hides in stone and story, waiting for the right eyes to see it. Speculation invites one last thought. If these artifacts are fragments of an alien past, whether seeded by visitors, inherited from cycles long forgotten, or remembered by cultures reaching for the stars, then they are not anomalies at all. They are messages. Messages reminding us that we are not alone, that our story is larger than we know, that our origin may lie not only in Earth's soil, but in the vastness of the cosmos. From here, the path stretches outward again, beyond artifacts and monuments, into the sky itself. Because if humanity carries fragments of memory from elsewhere, then surely the search for our true origin must also look outward to the stars, to the exoplanets waiting in the night, to worlds that might resemble the one we have forgotten. From here, the path stretches outward again, beyond artifacts and monuments, into the sky itself. Because if humanity carries fragments of memory from elsewhere, then surely the search for our true origin must also look outward to the stars, to the exoplanets waiting in the night, to worlds that might resemble the one we have forgotten. For most of human history, the stars seemed unreachable points of light with no surface, no place to stand, no chance of visiting. The ancients imagined them as fires, as gods, as jewels fixed to a celestial dome. It is only in the last few decades that we have begun to see them for what they are, suns, each with their own families of planets. The universe has revealed itself not as a void punctuated by stars, but as a vast field of solar systems, each potentially carrying worlds of land, ocean, and sky. The breakthrough came with the discovery of exoplanets, planets orbiting stars beyond our Sun. The first confirmed detection in the 1990s opened a floodgate. Since then, with telescopes like Kepler and TESS, astronomers have catalogued thousands of exoplanets. Some are giants, larger than Jupiter, orbiting close to their stars in blistering heat. Others are frozen, barren worlds circling dim suns. But among them, a precious few lie in what scientists call the habitable zone, the region where temperatures could allow liquid water, the ingredient most essential to life as we know it. As of today, thousands of such candidates exist. Kepler 186f, orbiting a red dwarf 500 light-years away, was one of the first Earth-sized planets discovered in a habitable zone. Kepler 452b, sometimes called Earth's cousin, orbits a star similar to our Sun in a region where liquid water might flow. More recently, the TRAPPIST-1 system revealed 7 Earth-sized planets, 3 of them in the habitable zone, circling a star only 40 light-years away. These are not distant, abstract numbers. They are potential homes, waiting in the dark. And yet, these discoveries raise a haunting question. Why do they feel so familiar? When scientists describe exoplanets with oceans, atmospheres, or Earth-like gravity, something in us stirs. It is not just curiosity, it is recognition, as though we are not hearing about new discoveries, but about places remembered. Could this be the echo of memory, the faint pull of a home long forgotten? Speculation allows us to imagine further. What if humanity's restlessness, its instinct to search outward, is not random? What if we are drawn to exoplanets because we have lived on them before, in cycles beyond memory? Perhaps our fascination with Earth-like worlds is not simply scientific but ancestral, the longing of a species remembering its scattered origins across the firsted stars. Think of how we describe these planets. We call them super-Earths, hot Jupiters, water worlds. We imagine their skies, their landscapes, their climates. Even without setting foot upon them, we dream of their oceans, their sunsets, their alien yet familiar horizons. This dreaming is not new. Myths of other worlds, paradises, heavens, lands beyond the sea of stars have always been with us. Now, science is simply giving names and coordinates to what our imaginations have carried for millennia. Consider how quickly humanity has turned its technology to this search. Within a single generation, we have built telescopes capable of not only detecting planets, but analyzing their atmospheres for signs of life. Soon, the James Webb Space Telescope and its successors will be able to scan for biosignatures, oxygen, methane, carbon dioxide, chemical hints that something is alive out there. Why this urgency? Why this drive, when we still struggle with so much here on Earth? Perhaps because the search is not optional. Perhaps it is instinct, written into us like migration routes in birds. We are not only looking for life elsewhere, we are looking for ourselves. The discovery of exoplanets also reshapes an old paradox. If the universe is filled with so many potential Earths, why do we feel so alone? This question, known as the Fermi paradox, haunts modern science. With billions of stars and trillions of planets, intelligent life should be common. And yet, we hear no signals, see no visitors. Unless, of course, the answer is that the visitors are already here, not in ships above our skies, but in the cells of our bodies. Perhaps we are the evidence. Perhaps humanity itself is the footprint of life seeded deliberately across the stars. This thought leads naturally to the idea of memory in stone and myth. If the pyramids, Stonehenge, and Göbekli Tepe are reminders of our connection to the stars, then the exoplanets are reminders from the stars themselves. They tell us, you are not unique, your world is not alone. There are others like it, scattered everywhere. If Earth is not the only possible home, then perhaps Earth is not our first. Perhaps we have been here before, and elsewhere too, in cycles that rise and fall like tides. Speculation deepens when we consider how humanity's imagination leaps toward colonization. Space agencies and private ventures speak of Mars as a second home, of terraforming planets, of building habitats among the stars. To many, this seems like ambition, even hubris. But perhaps it is something deeper. Perhaps it is memory resurfacing, the echo of what we have already done before. Colonization may not be our future alone, but our past repeated. The dream of building new homes in the sky may be less invention than inheritance. Even our technologies reflect this longing. The Voyager spacecraft, carrying golden records, have already left the solar system, drifting into interstellar space. Their messages, inscribed in sound and image, are seeds of memory sent outward, just as earlier beings may once have sent life here. Our satellites orbit like small moons. Our rovers crawl across Mars as though preparing the soil for future steps. Each act of exploration is also an act of return, a reaching not only for discovery, but for belonging. Pause and imagine standing on the surface of an exoplanet. The gravity feels familiar, the air breathable, the sky a shade of blue or green unlike Earth's but strangely comforting. You look upward and see constellations rearranged, yet something in you feels at home. Could it be that in such a moment you are not only exploring but remembering? That somewhere in your DNA, in your dreams, in your myths, is the faint knowledge of skies you once knew? If thousands of Earth-like worlds exist, then humanity's story is not confined to one planet. It is a cosmic story, written across light years, scattered like seeds. Perhaps Earth is only one chapter in a longer book. Perhaps our true home lies not here, but out there, waiting for us to remember. From here, the path unfolds further. If exoplanets are potential homes, then perhaps the history of civilizations, ours and others, is one of migration across the stars. And if so, then humanity may not be native to Earth at all, but settlers stranded here, our origin forgotten, our destiny still unfolding. From here, the path unfolds further. If exoplanets are potential homes, then perhaps the history of civilizations, ours and others, is one of migration across the stars. And if so, then humanity may not be native to Earth at all, but settlers stranded here, our origin forgotten, our destiny still unfolding. The idea of cosmic migration is not new. In myth and story, humanity has always imagined great journeys, exoduses across deserts, voyages across oceans, pilgrimages across continents. But what if these journeys are only small reflections of a deeper pattern? What if civilizations do not simply rise and fall on one planet, but move across the stars themselves, carrying with them knowledge, memory, and the seeds of life? Science has already shown us that migration is one of the most fundamental laws of survival. Birds travel thousands of miles each year, guided by instincts so precise they return to the same trees, the same rivers. Whales cross oceans, elephants cross savannas. Even the smallest insects follow routes written into their biology. If migration is such a universal strategy on Earth, why not in the cosmos? Why should civilizations not move across star systems in the same way, seeking new environments when old ones fail, carrying their essence across light years as naturally as birds cross skies? Perhaps this is the true context of panspermia, not simply microbes drifting by accident, but intentional journeys. Civilizations capable of traveling between stars might scatter themselves widely, ensuring their survival not through permanence but through movement. To stay in one place is to risk extinction, to spread is to endure. And so, the great story of life may not be about roots, but about wings. Speculation allows us to place humanity within this story. What if Earth is not our first world, but only our most recent? What if we are the descendants of travelers, migrants who crossed from another star system, only to lose their memory of origin over millennia? The myths of return, the longing for the sky, The stories of gods descending these could all be distorted recollections of that journey. Our ancestors may not have been created here, but arrived here, carrying with them fragments of advanced knowledge once common, knowledge that dwindled with time until it survived only in stone, story, and dream. The possibility is humbling. Imagine a civilization faced with the death of its world, a sun growing unstable, a planet exhausted, a catastrophe looming. Faced with extinction, they build ships or capsules, carrying not only people but seeds, animals, and knowledge. They set out across the stars, some reaching safety, others lost in the vast silence. Those who arrived on Earth found refuge, but at a cost. Over generations, the memory of their journey faded. Tools broke, systems failed, stories blurred into myths. The migrants became natives, forgetting their exile, yet always carrying the restlessness of those who know they are far from home. Could this explain why humanity seems so ill-fitted to Earth, and yet so driven to change it? Why we reshape landscapes, dam rivers, split atoms, and build machines that reach upward? Perhaps it is not arrogance but instinct. The instinct of settlers who once carried advanced knowledge, who now struggle to rebuild what was lost. Our civilization may be less a beginning than a remembering, a reawakening of capacities seeded long ago. The traces of such migrations may linger in the very anomalies we have already considered. The monuments aligned with stars, the artifacts out of place in time, the myths of founders and return. They may all be remnants of a story older than Earth, fragments of memory carried by those who crossed the void. Even in science, the idea of migration resonates. Astronomers speak of rogue planets, worlds drifting free of their stars, cast loose but still carrying their atmospheres, their oceans, their potential for life. If planets themselves can migrate, why not civilizations? The Milky Way is a vast ocean, its stars like islands. To move across it may seem impossible to us now, but perhaps to others it was as natural as crossing a sea. Our own history provides a mirror. Humanity has always been a migrant species. We walked out of Africa, across deserts and ice sheets, into forests and islands. We crossed oceans, settled continents, circled the globe. Each time we carried fire, tools, and stories. Each time we adapted but also remembered. Perhaps our cosmic history is the same, scaled upward. We are migrants still, moving not only across Earth but across the stars. Speculation takes this further. If civilizations migrate, then the galaxy may already be filled with settlers, species spread thinly across worlds, each carrying fragments of memory from elsewhere. Some may have forgotten entirely, living as natives on planets far from their origins. Others may remember, building technologies to continue the journey. Humanity, in this view, is neither alone nor unique. We are one thread in a vast tapestry of migration, one wave in an endless tide of life moving across the cosmos. And if this is true, then our destiny is clear. We are not meant to stay here forever. Earth is precious, but it is not permanent. One day, whether through necessity or longing, we will move again. The rockets and satellites of today are the first fragile steps of a species preparing to resume its journey. The memory of migration stirs within us, urging us onward. Picture it. Generations from now, ships leaving Earth, carrying humanity to new worlds. Children born beneath alien skies, growing up with constellations unfamiliar yet strangely comforting. They will tell stories of Earth as their ancestors told stories of other worlds. And perhaps in time, they too will forget, believing themselves natives until the cycle begins again. Migration is not an interruption of life, it is life itself, unfolding on a scale larger than we can yet imagine. This thought brings us to a deeper question. If migration is the true story of civilizations, then perhaps what we call alien life is not alien at all. Perhaps it is family, scattered across the stars, each branch remembering or forgetting in its own way. Humanity may not be searching for strangers, but for kin, and so the story carries us forward, not only into speculation but into reflection. If we are migrants, settlers stranded on Earth, then our role is not to remain still but to continue, to seek, to move, to rediscover the knowledge that was once common, and to carry it outward again. From here, the path naturally turns toward another possibility, that the universe itself is not simply a stage for migration, but something deeper. That perhaps the very fabric of reality is designed, and that humanity's place within it is not only physical but coded, like a story unfolding within a grand simulation. From here, the path naturally turns toward another possibility, that the universe itself is not simply a stage for migration, but something deeper. That perhaps the very fabric of reality is designed, and that humanity's place within it is not only physical but coded, like a story unfolding within a grand simulation. The idea may sound modern, even futuristic, but at its core it is ancient. For thousands of years, philosophers and mystics have wondered whether the world we experience is truly real or only an illusion. In India, the concept of Maya describes reality as a veil, a dream woven so tightly that we mistake it for permanence. In Plato's famous allegory, humanity lives in a cave, mistaking shadows for reality, never seeing the true forms outside. Again and again, cultures have whispered the same suspicion, that what we see is not the whole, that reality itself is a construct. In the modern age, this suspicion has taken a scientific form. With the rise of computers, virtual realities, and simulations, the analogy has become striking. What if the universe is not matter alone, but code? What if everything we see, stars, planets, even ourselves, is the unfolding of information, like characters moving within an immense program? The physicist John Wheeler once suggested that the foundation of reality is not matter but information, that the universe is built on bits, the binary yes or no of computation. Others point to the strange mathematical order of the cosmos. The laws of physics are not chaotic but precise, governed by constants so finely tuned that even the slightest variation would make life impossible. Gravity, electromagnetism, the strength of the strong nuclear force all fall within narrow ranges, as if set deliberately. Is this coincidence, or is it design? Then there is the quantum world, where particles exist in probabilities until observed, collapsing into definite states only when measured. To some, this resembles the rendering of a simulation, where only what is observed is calculated in detail. Reality, in this view, is not fixed but dynamic, like code responding to input. If so, then Earth itself may not be a random planet in a random universe, but a designed environment. Humanity may not have simply evolved here by chance, but may have been placed here not in the sense of physical seeding alone, but as characters within a grand narrative coded into the fabric of reality itself. Speculation stretches further. If the universe is a simulation, then who or what is running it? Are we the creation of advanced beings, testing scenarios, watching civilizations rise and fall as if within an experiment? Or are we part of something even larger, a nested reality where simulations create simulations, each layer believing itself real until it glimpses the next? And yet, within this unsettling thought, there is also wonder. If we are simulated, then the very code that shapes our world may carry meaning. The stars, the myths, the anomalies all may be part of the design, reminders for us to question, to seek, to awaken. Perhaps the simulation is not a trap but a teaching, guiding us toward recognition of our deeper nature. Humanity's sudden leaps in knowledge, the appearance of advanced ideas ahead of their time, the persistence of myths across cultures, these could all be seen as glitches or as deliberate signals, like fragments of advanced knowledge once common, re-emerging when the code allows it. The Piri race map, the Antikythera mechanism, the alignments of ancient monuments, perhaps they are not random but scripted, placed within the environment to remind us that reality is more complex than it appears. The simulation hypothesis also offers a new way of understanding our sense of displacement. If we feel out of place on Earth, if our bodies suffer, if our minds long for the stars, perhaps it is because Earth itself is not our ultimate home, but a designed stage. We are here to experience, to learn, to grow, but not to remain forever. The yearning we feel may be less homesickness and more awakening, the awareness that we are participants in something larger, something we are only beginning to glimpse. Consider dreams. In them, we inhabit worlds that feel real until we awaken. What if waking life is the same? A simulation so immersive that we take it as ultimate, until one day we awaken again. Perhaps death itself is less an ending than an exit from the simulation, a return to a larger reality. Speculation whispers that civilizations before us may have understood this. Their myths of gods descending, of realities beyond, of cycles of creation and destruction, these could be interpretations of the simulation. Perhaps advanced knowledge once common included the recognition that we live in a coded world. If so, their monuments, their stories, their artifacts may have been left as reminders for us, signs to look beyond the illusion, to see the greater pattern. And yet, even if we are simulated, our experience is no less real. The love we feel, the pain we suffer, the beauty we witness, all are true within this frame. The simulation does not diminish life, it enriches it. For if the universe is code, then every moment is intentional, every star a line of information, every human being a unique expression within the grand design. Pause for a moment and imagine yourself not as flesh and bone alone, but as information, a pattern of consciousness inhabiting a body within a vast coded world. The stars above you are pixels of light, but they are also symbols, reminders that the code extends beyond what you can see. In that moment, you are both participant and witness, both character and reader of the story. Perhaps that is the true purpose of the simulation, not to confine us, but to allow us to realize what we are. From here, the question naturally turns inward again. If the universe is coded, if Earth is a designed environment, then what of our minds? Could it be that consciousness itself is not native to this simulation, but something imported, something that does not belong to the code but animates it? From here, the question naturally turns inward again. If the universe is coded, if Earth is a designed environment, then what of our minds? Could it be that consciousness itself is not native to this simulation, but something imported, something that does not belong to the code but animates it? This possibility touches one of the deepest mysteries of science and philosophy. What is consciousness? Despite centuries of study, no one has been able to fully explain it. We can measure brain waves, map neurons, and observe chemical signals, but none of this explains the raw experience of being. The taste of sweetness, the sound of rain, the ache of longing, these are not mere data, they are lived realities. Philosophers call this the hard problem of consciousness. Why should matter produce experience at all? Some scientists argue that consciousness is an emergent property, a byproduct of complexity. As brains evolved, awareness simply appeared, but others whisper of deeper truths. What if consciousness is not produced by the brain but channeled through it? What if the brain is not the source of awareness but the receiver, like an antenna tuned to frequencies beyond the physical world? If so, then consciousness may be something imported, a spark from outside the code, entering bodies as players enter characters in a game. In this view, humanity is not only biological but spiritual, not only coded but animated by something larger. The simulation provides the stage, but consciousness provides the actor. Ancient traditions hint at this. In Hindu thought, the Atman, the self, is eternal, distinct from the body. In Buddhist philosophy, consciousness is described as a stream that continues beyond physical form. The Egyptians believed the Ba, the soul, could leave the body and travel between realms. Even in modern accounts, people speak of near-death experiences, out-of-body journeys, dreams that feel more real than waking. Across cultures, the idea persists. The mind is not confined to flesh. It belongs to something beyond. Speculation allows us to see this as memory. Perhaps humanity's sense of soul, of spirit, of life beyond death is not wishful thinking but recollection. Perhaps we remember, faintly, that consciousness does not originate here. It comes from elsewhere, carried across realities, incarnating in worlds as a traveler moves from one inn to another. Earth is not our only stop. It is one stage in a journey of awareness across stars, planets, and perhaps even dimensions. This perspective reframes humanity's peculiar restlessness. Why do we dream of flying, of leaving the body, of ascending to the heavens? Why do shamans across the world describe journeys into other realms, visions of stars, encounters with beings of light? Perhaps because they are glimpsing the truth, that our consciousness is not fully of this world. It is visiting, inhabiting, remembering what it once knew. Even science has begun to circle this idea. Some physicists speculate that consciousness may be fundamental, woven into the fabric of reality like space and time. Others suggest it could exist outside physical laws entirely, tapping into what some call the quantum field. If so, then our awareness may be less a product of evolution and more an import, arriving here to animate coded forms. Think of dreams. Each night, we slip into worlds not bound by the laws of physics. We fly, we shape reality with thought, we meet beings who speak in symbols. These dreamscapes feel real until we awaken. What if dreams are not merely random firings of the brain, but windows into the realm consciousness comes from? Perhaps in dreams, we remember fragments of other worlds, other lives, other homes. Speculation invites us further still. If consciousness is imported, then perhaps Earth is less a cradle of life and more a school, a designed environment where awareness enters to learn, to grow, to awaken. The challenges of pain, fragility, longing all may be lessons, tests within the simulation. Advanced knowledge once common may have included this recognition, that life is not about survival alone, but about awakening to our true nature. Imagine that long ago, humanity understood this. Perhaps ancient temples and rituals were not only religious but technological ways of tuning the mind to frequencies beyond, ways of opening gateways to the realms consciousness remembers. Shamans, priests, and mystics may have been less inventors of faith than technicians of spirit, guiding awareness between worlds. Over time, this knowledge was lost, surviving only in myth and fragment. But perhaps it was once as common as farming or fire, a daily recognition that we are visitors here, not natives. If so, then the myths of gods descending may also describe consciousness itself. Zeus, Quetzalcoatl, Viracocha beings arriving from beyond to shape humanity may be symbolic of the descent of awareness into matter. The gods are not only external visitors but metaphors for the spark that animates flesh, the light that enters bodies and gives them life. This thought carries profound implications. If our consciousness comes from elsewhere, then death is not an ending but a return. We do not vanish. We exit the simulation, shedding the coded environment for the larger reality beyond. The prophets, the mystics, the dreamers, they have always spoken of this return, of life beyond, of a home awaiting us. Perhaps they were not imagining, but remembering. Pause and reflect. Your thoughts, your dreams, your awareness, these may not be bound to this world at all. They may be travelers, migrating across realities as civilizations migrate across stars. Your body is earthly, but your mind may belong to the cosmos itself. And so, if consciousness is imported, then humanity is doubly alien. Not only might our DNA carry traces from beyond, but our very awareness may originate elsewhere. We are visitors twice over in body and in mind. Earth, then, is not only a planet but a stage, a school, a chapter in a story whose true scope lies far beyond. From here, the story opens again. If dreams are windows to other worlds, if memories of other lives are echoes of journeys across planets, then perhaps the key to understanding our alien nature lies not only in stars or stones, but in the visions we carry each night, in the dreams that whisper of skies with twin suns, of landscapes we have never seen, yet somehow know. From here the story opens again. If dreams are windows to other worlds, if memories of other lives are echoes of journeys across planets, then perhaps the key to understanding our alien nature lies not only in stars or stones, but in the visions we carry each night, in the dreams that whisper of skies with twin suns, of landscapes we have never seen, yet somehow know. Across cultures, across ages, people have reported dreams of places that do not exist on Earth. Skies lit by two suns, horizons with rings like Saturn's, cities of crystal and light, oceans under strange constellations. These images are so vivid, so persistent, that they have entered our mythologies, our religions, even our art. They recur again and again, in people who share no language, no history, no culture. Why? In ancient Mesopotamia, dream visions were recorded on clay tablets, often describing journeys into realms not of this world. In Greece, Aristotle mused on the strange landscapes seen in sleep, calling them messages from a deeper reality. Among indigenous peoples of the Americas, dreamtime was not illusion but truth, a realm as real as waking, in which ancestors and star beings could be encountered. In Tibetan Buddhism, dream yoga taught practitioners to become lucid, to recognize the dream as a gateway to other worlds. The pattern is clear. Humanity has always treated dreams not as random noise, but as portals. Modern psychology often explains dreams as the subconscious at play, a processing of memory, fear, and desire. And yet, this explanation does not fully account for the universality of certain motifs. Why should people across cultures dream of flying, of falling, of luminous beings, of alien landscapes? Why should children, who have never seen such imagery, describe skies with two moons or oceans of fire? Perhaps these are not inventions at all, but recollections, memories of places our consciousness has known before, resurfacing in sleep when the boundaries of waking reality loosen. Consider the dream of flight. Humans have always longed to soar, to break free from gravity. But why this particular longing? Why not dreams of burrowing underground or swimming endlessly in oceans? Perhaps because, in some other cycle, we did fly. Perhaps our ancestors lived under skies where flight was natural, or on worlds where gravity was lighter, where bodies could leap and glide. In dreams, the memory of that freedom stirs, reminding us of what was once common. Or the dream of alien cities, towers of glass, streets of light, beings moving in harmony. These appear in the visions of mystics, in the writings of prophets, in the testimonies of dreamers across time. Could they be archetypes of a future we long for, or memories of a past we have lost? Perhaps both. Perhaps the dream of the shining city is humanity, remembering civilizations that existed in cycles before this one, civilizations seeded from beyond, whose memory lingers in us like an echo. The strangest dreams are those of alien skies. People describe them with uncanny detail, stars arranged in unfamiliar constellations, suns rising and setting in ways unlike Earth's, moons too large or too many. What are we to make of this? Skeptics call them imagination, but speculation offers another path. What if these are true memories, fragments of consciousness recalling other worlds it has inhabited? If consciousness is indeed imported, traveling across realities, then dreams may be the luggage it carries, visions of homes left behind, resurfacing in the night. Even science has touched on this possibility. Neurologists note that dreams often recombine fragments of waking life. But what if some of those fragments are not from this life, but from others? If memory is not confined to one body or one lifetime, then dreams may be a place where the past and the elsewhere overlap. When you dream of a sky with two suns, perhaps you are not imagining, but remembering. Speculation takes this further. What if advanced knowledge, once common, included the deliberate use of dreams as maps? Ancient shamans may have guided dreamers into shared visions, recording their journeys in symbols and carvings. Perhaps this is why star maps appear in caves, why mythologies describe constellations with such precision. The dreamer would travel inward, but the vision would point outward to places in the cosmos once known, now remembered only in sleep. Imagine a time when humanity used dreams as classrooms, as laboratories, as gateways, when children were taught not only to eat and walk, but to dream consciously, to explore landscapes beyond Earth. Knowledge of other worlds may have been passed this way, not through books or speech, but through shared dreamscapes. Over time, as the cycles turned and memory dimmed, this knowledge became fragmented, surviving only in myths of gods who teach in sleep, of visions that reveal hidden truths. Even in our age, the pattern continues. People across the world report dreams of alien contact beings of light, ships descending, lessons given. Psychologists dismiss these as cultural artifacts shaped by science fiction. But what if they are not inventions but continuities? What if they are the same dream memory that guided our ancestors, resurfacing in a form our culture can recognize? The universality of such dreams cannot be ignored. They cross borders, languages, and religions. They appear in the diaries of mystics, in the visions of children, in the reports of those who awaken, shaken and awed, convinced they have touched something real. They speak of a collective memory, a human inheritance that emerges not in waking life but in the quiet theater of sleep. Pause for a moment and imagine your own dreams. The landscapes you see, the skies you walk under, the beings you encounter. What if they are not random? What if they are your consciousness remembering, whispering of other homes, other times, other lives? The familiarity you feel, the strange certainty that you know, a place you have never visited, perhaps that is not illusion, perhaps it is recognition. From here, the path unfolds into an even deeper possibility that what we call past life memories may not be confined to Earth at all. That the reincarnations spoken of in countless traditions may stretch not across centuries here, but across worlds elsewhere, and that dreams may be the echoes of those migrations. Across cultures and across ages, death has rarely been seen as a final extinguishing. It is not an ending, but a threshold. The Egyptians spoke of the soul crossing to Orion and Sirius. The Hindus described rebirth, the Atman continuing its journey. The Norse imagined halls beyond the sky. Again and again, humanity has whispered the same conviction, that to die is to return, not to vanish. And so the question lingers, vast and unanswerable. When we close our eyes for the last time, do we dissolve into nothing? Or do we awaken elsewhere, not on this earth, but in the oldest civilization of all, the one that seeded us, shaped us, and still waits for us among the stars? Perhaps the truth is not silence, but memory, not loss, but reunion, not exile, but homecoming. Imagine it now. In the darkness, gates begin to open. They are not gates of stone, but of light, stretching wider than galaxies. Beyond them, there is no emptiness, only voices, familiar, ancient, waiting. They do not speak in words, but in recognition, welcoming you not as a stranger, but as a child who has wandered long and finally found the way back. And perhaps that is the answer we have been searching for all along. Not that aliens visited us, not that we are waiting for them to arrive, but that we have always been them, wanderers of the cosmos, exiles of forgotten worlds, carrying the memory of our true home in our stories, our dreams, and our longing for the stars. The question is not whether we belong to Earth. The question is whether Earth was ever meant to be our final destination. And as you drift into rest, Perhaps you can feel it, the faint sound of those gates in the darkness opening at last, not to silence, not to nothing, but to the oldest of all welcomes, a chorus of voices calling you home.